The Dallas Stars are in the thick of the hunt for first place in the NHL Central Division. In fact, they are in first place. Dane Lewis of Locked On Stars joined us to talk about what it'll take to reach first place at the end of the season and how the Stars' new acquisitions are doing since the trade deadline. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Stars, Dane Lewis. And Dane, first place right now in the Central Division, but it's a real dogfight. Talk to me about what's been helping the Stars be so successful lately, because, you know, they pulled out a pretty important win Saturday in overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the term right there. Very crucial win for the team on Saturday night in Seattle. And this team has kind of gone through a little bit of a rejuvenation offensively the month of February. While it was a lot of home games for the Stars, their offense really struggled at times where they were only scoring 1 or 2 goals a game. The power play couldn't really get going, and it was really just the Stars having to rely on Jake Ottinger to win games, and sometimes that worked, and sometimes you play really good teams like the Boston Bruins or the Carolina Hurricanes, teams like that, and as good as your goaltender might be, they're not going to be able to stop some of the best players in the NHL. But now the offense has finally started to roll a little bit again. We saw on Thursday night, the Stars put up 10 goals in Buffalo against the Sabres. So I know that's kind of how the Sabres are this year, where they can score a lot, but they give up a lot. And even in Seattle, I mean, getting, 4 goals in that game as the road team is pretty important, and very important win in terms of the standings and the race for the division and the race for the Western Conference. But that's game 2 of what is 6 on the road straight for the Stars. So they still have 4 more away from home up in the Pacific Northwest. And so pretty important win. And this team seems to kind of be hitting their stride offensively. And hopefully they're doing it at the right time, where by the time the playoffs roll around, that they won't skip a beat and they'll be able to still produce those goals. I know games get a lot tighter. The scoring tends to go down a little bit in the playoffs, but I think with this team and the players they have right now that are catching fire, like Rope Hintz, Mason Marchment is finally starting to get on a roll again. I think this team is looking in a good spot in terms of the race for the division and especially the West. If they can get that 1 seed out West and make the road to the Stanley Cup Finals go through Dallas, I think they're going to be in a really good spot come playoff time.
Yeah, always helps to have home ice advantage. We're 10 days past the trade deadline. How have some of the Stars' trade deadline acquisitions helped this team? What are their contributions?
Yeah, well, the Stars weren't necessarily the busiest team at the deadline, but I think they made very meaningful moves. They got Evgenii Dadonov from Montreal, and they got Max Domi from Chicago, who is a guy that I've really wanted the Stars to pursue for the past few months. I know Patrick Kane was in those discussions, and just with the cap space and the what he had left to offer, which was good, but a lot of questions concerning his health. I really thought that Domi was the safe bet with only a $3 million cap hit, having one of his best seasons of his career. And so far, he's really paid off for the team. People who watched the highlights of that Dallas and Seattle game, he played a huge role in the overtime period with that saucer pass to Miro Heiskanen for the win. And it's just little plays like that, things that Max Domi does with the puck. He's very smart with it. He knows when to hold on to it, and he knows when to let it go. He knows when to shoot. And I think players that play with him benefit from that, whether it is Tyler Seguin or in that case it was Miro Heiskanen because it was 3-on-3 overtime. But he just has an IQ and a vision that not many other players on the team possess. And he also kind of brings that grit and energy, just like his dad Ty Domi did back in the day when he was in the league. And so he's a really fun player to watch. I think he blends well with this locker room, both in terms of skill, but also personality. And Evgenii Dadonov the same way. I think he has a really nice playmaking ability where he can score, but he plays alongside Jamie Benn and the rookie Wyatt Johnston, and they've formed a really good chemistry where all 3 of those guys are a threat to shoot, but they're all kind of under the same boat of looking to make a pass first, and they'll shoot if they're open. And I think that that's a really good attribute for those 3 to have. And a really, really good trade deadline for the Stars as they get both of those players. They add some depth to the forward ranks, and they didn't really have to give up too much. They give up Denis Gurianov, Anton Hudobin, and a second-round pick in 2025. So they still keep their key prospects, and they've given up a few draft picks in this year's draft, but I think the team is still looking good in terms of future capital in draft and prospects and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's not always important to make headlines at the trade deadline. It's important to fill in the needs that your team has, and I think Dallas did a good job of that.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when we look back at this season, people are going to ask who won the Stanley Cup, not who won the trade deadline. So sometimes those things can go together. I mean, there's a good chance that, a team out east that makes the Stanley Cup finals made some good moves at the deadline. But I think that's kind of where the Stars are at, is they liked their group and they just needed a few depth pieces to really bolster that roster. And Jim Nill was able to go out and do that. And so I think Stars fans are happy with where this team's at right now. And as we've established, they've looked good on this road trip, and they're continuing to compile points and stay very much alive in the race for the West.
Little bit of a scary moment earlier this week for Tyler Seguin. He had to leave the game. I believe it was Thursday with took a skate to the leg. Talk to me about his status. How long may he be out, and what are the Stars going to do to adjust while he's out of the lineup?
Yeah, very scary moment for sure. And especially a guy like Tyler Seguin, who's already been through so many injuries back in the bubble just a few years ago when the Stars went to the Stanley Cup final. And so you hardly ever see a player like him leave the ice on their own accord and say, hey, I need to be out. And yeah, it's a lower body injury. He's been stitched up, had a cut on his left leg. And so there's obviously needing to be some time to heal there. And with stitches, you definitely don't want to rush back and risk re-injury or opening up the wound, because that could lead just to a whole other set of problems, not just in terms of Tyler Seguin not playing, but for his long-term health. And so for the betterment of him, I hope he's able to fully recover and get back to being himself, whether that's, the last few games of the regular season or if that's waiting for the playoffs, which I don't think we'll have to wait that long. The last I saw, he was technically listed as day-to-day. I can't imagine he comes back on the 6-game road trip. If he does, maybe at the very end. I think the Stars are in Calgary for their last game near the end of the month of March, but I don't necessarily see him coming back anytime soon. I don't think they want to rush it. They want to make sure he's okay. And the nice part is the Stars do have some pretty good depth with the team now, with guys like Dadonov and Domi on the team, and you have guys like Ty Dellandrea. And right now they have Freddie Olofsson, who's spent the majority of the season in the American Hockey League with the Texas Stars, but he's kind of been one of the go-to guys for this team, that when someone gets hurt or when someone's down, they can call him up. He's a 26-year-old who made his NHL debut this season. So an older player, I guess technically a rookie, but a guy who's played a ton of professional hockey. And while he's typically relegated to the fourth line, can certainly hold his own. Not necessarily a goal scorer, but a guy who can play alongside your fourth line checkers like Radek Faksa, Ty Dellandrea, whoever you really need to play alongside. And he's looked pretty good so far. So I think the team is going to be okay as of right now, and they'll find a way to manage until Tyler Seguin's able to come back.
Yeah, always, those 26-year-old rookies were always hungry when they finally get their opportunity. Yes. And that's always good to see. Dane, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, they can find me on social media, on Twitter, just at Dane_Lewis. And you can find the podcast as well, Locked On Stars. Just search the show name. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and that same for the podcast as well. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, all of the places that you get your podcast at. And also on Tuesday's editions of Locked On NHL with Brett Holden for Western Conference. So I'm sure on Tuesday we'll be talking about the playoff picture and things like that as we head down the final few weeks of the season.
Always look forward to seeing you there. And Dane, thanks so much for doing this.
Yep. Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted to find one supplement that would meet all my nutritional needs. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all these things. And it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.